Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Nun Aleph. We begin with a long baraita, and then we're going to analyze the various parts of the baraita. So it reads, Tenor Banan, Ubat ish kohen ki techel. Let's remind ourselves of the full pasuk. Bat ish kohen, so a daughter of a kohen, if she profanes herself by doing zinut, we'll define this, she profanes her father, and therefore she gets serefa. So what does this mean? Ubat ish kohen ki techel. Yachol afilu chilat Shabbat. It says if a bat kohen profanes what? You can profane a lot of things. If you just had chilul, it might continue with chilul Shabbat. So maybe it means if she violates Shabbat, then she gets serefa. Usually someone who violates Shabbat gets sekila. Is maybe saying that this is different, that a bat kohen, she gets serefa for violating Shabbat. Is that what it means? If I stop at the word techel, it could mean that. The next verse says, Kitechel liznot. She profanes through some kind of prohibited relations. And therefore we know that this is talking about something related to promiscuity. Yachol afilu penuya. Now maybe it means even if she's single and she goes with another man outside the context of marriage, so that would be called promiscuous relations. Could it mean that? In fact, the word liznot, zona, has many meanings, and so that is a possible meaning, and that would mean that if a bat kohen has relations with someone, even though she's not married, she's a ne'ara, and she does that, she would get serefa. That's not the law for a bat Israel, but it could be a bat kohen. She is on an elevated level. So is that the right way to read it? Ne'amar kan avia v'ne'amar lehalan avia, ma lehalan zenut oim zikat ha'ba'al, afkan zenut oim zikat ha'ba'al. No, you can't read it that way, because the pasuk in Devarim that's talking about a bat Israel, who is a na'ara me'orasa, also has the word aviha in it. And so just like over there, it's clear, it's talking about when someone commits adultery and she's connected to a husband because she's already me'orasa. So too, we're talking about a bat kohen who does some promiscuous act while she is also connected to a husband. So it has to be someone who is a me'orasa or nisu'at, that depends on the machloket. But it can't be, it's not a single person. No, maybe it means bat ish kohen ki techel is not et aviha. Maybe you could read it is not et aviha, that she sins with her father, to exclude anybody else. If she goes and has relations with anybody else, that would be the same law as a bat kohen, whatever that law is, depending on if she's nisu'ah or me'orasa. But if a bat kohen commits incest with her father, then she gets serefa. Kishomer hi mechalelet heve'amer kol adam amor. That can't be either, because it says et aviha hi mechalelet. She is profaning her father. But if she is having relations with her father, then the opposite is also true. Her father is profaning her. They both are sinning and profaning each other. So you wouldn't say that she is profaning her father only in one direction, unless she is having relations in a prohibited way with someone else, because she's committing adultery, and that profanes her father. So it can't be that she is sinning with her father. Hama ani mekayem aviha. So what does it mean to say her father? Therefore, we have to conclude, as we did before, that when it says aviha over there, it says here regarding bat kohen aviha, and it says regarding a bat Israel aviha, just like over there, she has a bond to a husband, so she's committing adultery. So too here, she gets serefa when she is committing adultery. Now in the pasuk in Devarim, talking about a bat Israel, it says talking about only a na'ara arusa. If you remember our chart that we had yesterday, na'ara arusa gets sikila if she's a bat Yisrael. That was the pasuk in Devarim. Now na'ara v'hi nesu'a, bogeret v'hi arusa, bogeret v'hi nesu'a, ve'afilu hiskina minayin. Now how do I know that a bat kohen would get serefa not only if she's a na'ara and she's an arusa, but also if she's a na'ara and nisu'ah. She's young, but she's also nisu'ah. She gets serefa. What about a bogeret and she is an arusa? What if she's an adult and arusa? Or bogeret, she's an adult and nisu'ah. Or even if she is older, usually older person is not called a bat. So bat kohen, would that mean only if she's young? So what about all these cases? How can we derive that they also get burning if they commit adultery? Talmud Lomar, bat kohen mikol makom, from the extra vav, bat kohen, that means all of these cases get serefa. We see that this is following Rabbi Shimon. Right? Remember over here, Rabbi Shimon says that both arusa and nisu'ah get serefa. Chachamim would say, no, only in nisu'ah, not in arusa. Okay, so this Braita is in fact following Rabbi Shimon, as the Gemara will say. Talmud Amaru bat kohen mikol makom. Now, bat kohen en li ela sheniset lekohen, niset levi usrel lekuti lachalal bamzel natin minayin. Talmud Amar ubat ish kohen af al pi she'ena kohenet. So it says, when it says bat kohen, maybe she only gets serefa if she is married to a kohen. She is a daughter of a kohen, married to a kohen, and she commits adultery, then she gets serefa. But how do you know what if she's married only to a Levi? It's a lower level compared to her. She's on a high status from Bat Kohen. Or she's married to a Yisrael, or Kuti is a Samaritan, or Halal is a Kohen, but who has flawed lineage, or a Mamzer, or a Natin, a Gibeonite, Minayin. How about in those cases? How do you know she would still get serefa, even if she's married to one of these lower level people and she commits adultery? Talmud Omar, bat ish kohen, because it says the extra word ish. I could have just said bat kohen. So from the extra word ish, we learn even if she is not a kohenet, meaning if she's not married to a kohen. So someone who's married to a kohen, we call her a kohenet. So even if she's not a kohen because she's married to Israel, still she commits adultery, she gets serefa as long as she is a bat kohen. Now he bisrefa ve'en ba'ala bisrefa. We're going to learn from also the word he, right? He mechalelet. He means particularly she gets serefa, but the adulterer does not get serefa. The adulterer will get the normal punishment that an adulterer with bat Yisrael would get. So that, let's say it's nisu'ah, and so a man who commits adultery, he gets chenek and she gets serefa, right? Or it could be sekila if it's an arusa, and she would get serefa according to Bishimon, but he would get sekila. So this serefa only applies to her, the adulterer, not to the adulterer man. He bisrefa ben zomemeha bisrefa. And furthermore, let's say two witnesses come and say, we saw this bat kohen commit adultery, and those two witnesses are found to be edim zomemin. Normally, they get the same punishment that they tried to give someone else, but that does not apply to edim zomemin. They get the same punishment that the adulterer would get, like the man would get, and not like she would get. So they don't get serefa, they would get hainek or sikila. Rabbi Eliezer omer, et abiha bisrefa, vet hamiha biskila. Rabbi Eliezer says, if she commits adultery with her father, or she has relations with her father, she gets serefa. And if she does so with her father-in-law, that would be adultery and incest, then she gets sekila. And the Gemara will explain this statement of Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, that's the end of the Braita, and now we elaborate piece by piece. Amar Mor, Yachol afilu chela Shabbat, chela Shabbat basikilahi. Now we ask, the Braita said, can it be even if she violates Shabbat, like if you just had the first few words, ubat ish kohen ki techel, chilul, maybe it means chilul Shabbat, she gets serefa. But then we ask, what do you mean chilul Shabbat? A normal person, anyone who does chilul Shabbat gets sikila, and sikila is the worst. So would you say a bat kohen gets a lighter punishment? If anything, shouldn't a bat kohen get a worse punishment? What sense would it even make? Even in Hava Amina, that she should get serefa instead of sikila for chilul Shabbat. Oh, this baraita is authored by Rabbi Shimon, which we can tell from the continuation, but even right up front, has to be Rabbi Shimon, who says serefa is worse. Because I might have thought that since the Torah is machmir regarding kohanim, in what way is the Torah machmir with kohanim? Because they have many extra mitzvot, like for terumah and other things. So they have many more mitzvot. They can't become tameh lamet, for example. So since the law is more stringent for them, I might think that a bat kohen, if she violates Shabbat, she gets a worse punishment, not just sikila, serefa. And that's why it comes, and then the Braita comes and says, not so. It has to teach us that that's not true, because it's only techel liznot, only if she profanes something regarding promiscuous activity. Now we ask, hold on, why would you even think that a bat kohen would be different from a kohen himself, right? You're telling you in the Hava Amina, it was that a regular a kohen male who violates Shabbat would be sikila, but a bat kohen, that would be worse. Then she would get burning. I mean, a regular kohen has all the extra laws of can't become tameh. In fact, a male kohen has indeed extra laws, can't become tameh lamet. A woman kohen can become tameh lamet. So if anything, if you would think you're going to be machmir, it would be a male. No one would think that a bat kohen only, if she violates Shabbat, we're going to be more machmir on her, but not on the male. So what sense would that make? Oh no, here's what we might have thought. Ihu de ishtaria le Shabbat legabe avodah, hi kevan de la ishtaria Shabbat legaba ematidon bisrefa kamashmalan. Actually might have thought to be more lenient on a male kohen than a female kohen, because a male kohen, he is permitted to violate Shabbat for sacrifices. Sacrifices override Shabbat. If it's a kohen's turn to serve that week, and it's Shabbat, he does korban tamid, korban musaf, and he's doing the slaying and the flaying and the cooking, burning, and so he's doing all these things on Shabbat. So I might think, since he does avodah and that overrides Shabbat, so it will be lenient for him if he's mechalel Shabbat in a prohibited way, not for avodah, and only get sikila. But for a woman, since she does not serve in the Bet HaMikdash, and she never has an exemption for Shabbat for avodah, maybe she should get a more serious punishment than serefa. That's what we all might have thought if we didn't have the word liznot. Anyway, that's why it comes to teach us about kitechel liznot, meaning only if she does chilul Shabbat, only if she does chilul through zenut, but chilul Shabbat, everybody gets the same punishment of sikila. Yachol afilu penuya haliznot ketiv. Now the Braita had a thought, had an initial thought, hava amina, that maybe if a single bat kohen who goes and has relations with someone outside the context of marriage, is promiscuous relations, not for the sake of marriage, that maybe she gets serefa. Wait a second, it says liznot, and usually liznot means prohibited relations, like as an adultery. But if she's single, then it's not adultery. So why would we have thought that? And the answer, we might have thought that, Rabbi Elazar Damar, Panui haba ala penuya shelo l'shum ishut asa'a zona. Rabbi Elazar says that if a single man has relations with a single woman, not for the purpose of marriage, she is called a zona, and that applies to the law of who a kohen can marry. A pasuk in Vayikra says, Isha zona v'chalala lo yikachu. So a kohen, any kohen, is not allowed to marry a zona. And so Rabbi Elazar is defining what is called a zona for the purpose of marrying a kohen, and he has a very expansive definition that any woman, even if it's not prohibited relations, even if it's not adultery or incest, even if she's a single woman with a single man, still that she is defined as a zona because it's outside the context of marriage. And so that's why I might have thought, since since Rabbi Elazar calls that a zona, so maybe I would think that's the same definition over here. O bat ish kohen ki techel liznot, that she has promiscuous relations, meaning outside of marriage, even though she's single, she would get serefa. So that's why I would have thought that. And therefore, it comes to teach us, no, that's not so. O eno omer aviha ela lehosi et kol adam, or maybe the word aviha is not for the gezerah shavat, the same word aviha back in Devarim that teaches us that penuya is not included, but rather someone who's na'ara me'orasa. Maybe the word aviyah does not come to teach that, but rather comes to exclude everybody else. So that she doesn't get serefa if she's with anybody else except for her father. So Ela Mainihu, so what case is it including? Shezineta me'avia, that she had incest with her father, and that's when she gets burnt. Mai iria bat kohen, afilu bat Yisrael nameh, but that can't be because what? Then why would it say bat Yisrael? The punishment for any woman who sins with her own father is serefa. So you don't have to say, oh, if she's a bat kohen, then she gets serefa. Everybody gets serefa, even the bat Yisrael. Damar Rava amar li Rav Yitzchak bar Abudimi atya henna. Rava proves that the punishment for incest with one's daughter is in fact serefa. He learns it from a double gezerah shava. The first one is from two pesukim that have the word henna in them. One pasuk, 18:17, says, Advat isha ubita lo tegale. So a woman and her daughter, one is not allowed to be with both of them. And the rabbis understand the word isha to mean that he's married to her. So if someone's married to a woman and she has a daughter, whether he's the father or not the father, she has a daughter from a previous marriage, he's not allowed to be with that daughter. And the end of the pasuk says shara henna, has the word henna. But that's only true if it's within marriage. If he's married to the mother, he cannot be with the daughter. What if he's not married to the mother? How about then? Is he allowed to have relations with his own daughter, but it was from not from within marriage? He had a daughter outside of marriage. Well, here this pasuk says advat bat pincha o bat pitecha lo tegale. This says one cannot have relations with a granddaughter. It doesn't say the word isha. So from here I know that one cannot have relations with his own granddaughter, even if it's outside of marriage. But here I only know granddaughter. It doesn't say anything about daughter. But it does say ki advatecha henna, says the word henna. So therefore, through the gezerah shava, I combine the two, and I learn that one cannot have relations with his daughter, even if it's outside of marriage, because this is a daughter within marriage, this is a granddaughter outside of marriage, so I combine the two. So that's how I know that it's prohibited. But what is the punishment? Atya zima. That would be from this pasuk here that we already saw at the second last word, zimahi. And then I have another pasuk that says, V'isha sherikach et isha ve'et ima. If someone has relations with a woman and that woman's mother, then that's zima. And ba'esh yisrefu otam oto ve'eten lo tiyeh zima bedochem. It says zima again. So here it says the punishment of serefa for a woman and her mother. And so we take that zima and connect it to this one, and then we learn it's also true for a daughter. So Rava proves from this that the punishment for relations between a father and daughter is serefa for everyone. And therefore it doesn't make sense that this pasuk here would come to teach us that the punishment for aviha, says aviha means specifically aviha, bat kohen tike techel liznot, bat ish kohen liznot, right? And et aviha hi mechalelet, and aviha here means that for a bat kohen she gets serefa. Can't be, because everybody gets serefa for a sin with one's father. So why would we need it? And the answer is tirich, we do in fact need a sakadatecha minachera lapoke mederava medegale rachamana bebat kohen velo bat Yisrael kamash malan. I do need it because I might have thought that maybe this pasuk obat kohen obat ish kohen ki techel liznot is actually coming to reject Rava, since the Torah reveals that a bat kohen gets serefa. So I would say, oh, I see, look at this pasuk, an explicit pasuk says a bat kohen gets serefa. That means a bat Yisrael does not get serefa. And this gezerah shava that Rava made must be wrong. And gezerah shava can't override a pasuk. That's what I would have thought. So that's why I need he mechalelet to teach me that it's only in a case where she causes her father to be profaned, but not where her father causes her to be profaned. And that's why it's not, in fact, this pasuk is not talking about relations between a father and daughter. Okay, next, the bat kohen en li ela sheniset lekohen niset levi leIsrael lekuti lechalal lenatid lemamzer minayin tamadomar bat ish kohen afapi she'ena kohenet. The Braita, back to the Braita, taught that if she's a bat kohen, so then the Braita asked, I only know if she married a kohen. Maybe then, if she married a kohen and then had adultery, she gets serefa. But maybe if she's married to a non-kohen, anyone, Levi Israel, kuti, halal, natin, mamzer, minayin. See, a bat kohen is permitted to marry a Levi and Israel. She's not allowed to marry the others, halal, and so on. So, but either way, how do I know that she does get serefa? Bat ish kohen. As long as she's a bat kohen, then it doesn't matter, even if she's not a kohenet, meaning even if she's not married to a kohen. Now, mishum de'i naseba lehu lehane la bat kohen hi. Now we ask, what were you thinking even in the question? Just because she's married to any of these people, whether it's someone she's allowed to marry or not allowed to marry, would you think she's not a bat kohen? I mean, she remains a bat kohen no matter what. Her father's always going to be a kohen. You can't undo that. And furthermore, does it say only if she's a bat kohen and she marries a kohen? I mean, the Torah would have to say so for us to know that, she only gets serefa if she's married to a kohen. It doesn't say anything about that. So why would we even have thought that the serefa only applies if she marries a kohen? And the answer is Sakadatecha mina ki techel liznot amalachamana hanemilehecha deka mitachela hashta. Aval ha kevan deka mitachala vekaima meikara damarmor ubat kohen ki tiye leish zar kevan shenibala lepasula pesala. I might have thought that since the pasuk says if she profanes herself by committing a promiscuous act, that's where the Torah says she gets serefa. But that's only true if she now becomes profaned by committing adultery. And so, but before that, she was not profaned. But if someone marries a non-Kohen, she will have been profaned already. Even if she marries a Yisrael, which she's permitted to marry, she no longer can eat terumah. So that's a downgrade for her. She was a bat Kohen, she was holy. While she's in her father's house, she can eat terumah, and now if she marries anybody on this list, she already became profaned when she got married. When she committed adultery, you can't say ki techel liznot that now she got profaned. She already was profaned. And we have a statement about this that says, bat ish is a different pasuk. Bat kohen, not ish, bat kohen ki tielishad. If a bat kohen marries a foreigner, that means someone that she's not allowed to marry, like a halal. Once they have relations, she cannot eat terumah, so she already becomes profaned when she gets married to such a man. And the Levi Yisrael nameh, and even if she marries someone she's permitted to, a bat kohen is permitted to marry a Levi or a kosher Yisrael, v'shabe el bet abiyakin oreh. The pasuk says, if she gets divorced or widowed and she goes back to her father's house, then she can eat terumah again. We learned from that that while she is married to a Levi or Yisrael, she cannot have terumah. So we see that she gets profaned already when she gets married. So I might think, Ema lo tidon bisrefa kamash malan. I might have thought that since she already was profaned when she got married, the fact that she now commits adultery, that she's already profaned. So she's not being profaned now, and so maybe she wouldn't get serefa, and she would only get serefa if she was married to a kohen, where she was holy at the time that she got married, and it's the adultery that causes her now to be profaned, because now she's not allowed to be married to this kohen anymore, and she cannot eat terumah. So that's why I might have thought from the word ki techel liznot, only if through the act of adultery she becomes lowered in status, profaned, and cannot eat teruma, that's when she gets sedefa, but otherwise not. And so that's why kamash malan, we have to learn that that's not so. Bat ish kohen, no matter what, as long as she's always a bat kohen, and therefore it doesn't matter who she is married to, whoever she's married to, even if it's someone she's not allowed to marry, if she commits adultery, then she gets sedefa. Udela k'Rabbi Meir. Now this would be in opposition to the opinion of Rabbi Meir de Tanya. Bat Kohen sheniset Israel v'achlat teruma meshalemet et hakeren ve'ena meshalemet et hachomesh umitata bisrefa. Because this baraita, which is all the words of Rabbi Meir, says that a Bat Kohen who married a Yisrael, and so she's not allowed to eat teruma lechatechila. What if she did eat teruma? She has to pay for the principal, but not add an extra fifth. You see, if a total non-Kohen, just a Yisrael, eats teruma, they have to pay back the principal, plus they have to add a fifth, but she doesn't, which means that because she's a Bat Kohen, even though she's married to a Yisrael, she's not totally profaned. She has to pay, she can't eat it, she's not supposed to eat it, she has to pay the principal, but she doesn't get the penalty. And she gets serefa because she's a Bat Kohen. But if she married a halal, or someone else who she's not allowed to marry as a Bat Kohen, then she pays keden and chomesh. Now she's totally disqualified from eating teruma. She's like a regular Yisrael and has to pay the principal and the extra fine of 20%. And her punishment would be chenek if she committed adultery, according to Rabbi Meir. So you see, Rabbi Meir actually does say, not for everything, because not for if she marries a good Yisrael, kosher Yisrael or Levi, but if she marries a halal or someone else that she's not allowed to marry, indeed, she becomes totally profaned. And if she then commits adultery while she's married to that man, then she's not treated as a Bat Kohen bisrefa. She gets the regular punishment of chenek if she's a nesu'ah. So that is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. And we did not say that. Rather, we're assuming like Chachamim. Chachamim omedim zova zo meshalemot keren velo chomesh umitatan bisrefa. Chachamim say that someone's a Bat Kohen, no matter who she marries, whether it's a Yisrael, a Levi, a Halal, a Mamzer, or anybody on that list, if she eats teruma, she's totally disqualified for teruma. She has to pay the principal and the extra amount. And if she commits adultery, then her punishment will be serefa no matter what. And so our baraita is in accordance with Chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer omer, et abiha bisrefa ve'et chamiha biskila. Mai et abiha ve'et chamiha. Now back to the Baraita, said the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that if she is with her father, she gets serefa. With her father-in-law, she gets sikila. So what does that mean with her father-in-law? Ilema et abiha me'aviha ve'et chamiha mechamiha mai iria bat kohen afilu bat Yisrael nameh bito bisrefa v'chalato biskila. If we say, as it seems to mean simply, that she sins with her own father, and father-in-law means she sins with her own father-in-law. Both of these are cases of incest. Well, then why say Bat Kohen? Because this would be the same law also for a Bat Yisrael. That if a father and daughter have incest, then her punishment is serefa, and if it's a daughter-in-law, the punishment is sikila. So the Rabbi Eliezer is telling us, for a Bat Kohen, it's serefa and sikila. Yeah, but that's true for anyone, even for a Bat Yisrael. So what would he be teaching? Rather, a different interpretation to be Eliezer. When he says that if she has relations et abiha, it doesn't mean with her father, it means with some other guy, with some adulterer. But it means while she is in the house of her father, meaning she is only in arusa. So if she's in arusa, then she gets serefa. Et chamia means when she's in her father-in-law's house, meaning when she's married. Often when someone got married, they left their father's house and they would go to the husband's house, but the husband is together in a a compound living with his father. So, and that means in her father's house, she commits adultery with someone else, not related at all. So that means from an adultery with a nesu'ah gets sikila. Now, if we compare that to our chart, we see that's actually the opposite. It doesn't fit with any of the opinions here, because we just said arusa would be serefa and then nesu'ah sikila. Well, nobody says serefa sikila. Only the Bishimon says serefa, so would agree with that part of it, but nobody says sikila for a nesu'ah. So we see now this is going to be a new opinion that we haven't seen yet. So we ask Keman, if you're going to say like Rabbanan, they say that if she's married, she gets serefa, but not if she's arusa, right? So they have, Chachamim have serefa over here, but they don't have serefa over here for arusa, and that's what Rabbi Eliezer said. He could be Shimon, ha'amar achat arusa v'achat nesua b'srefa. Rabbi Shimon says everybody gets serefa, but we need it to be that if she's nesua, she gets sikila. V'i could be Ishmael, ha'amar arusa yasat lisrefa v'lo nesua et chamiha cheneku. He says that arusa, she gets serefa. Okay, that part fits with Rabbi Eliezer, but he says not nesu'ah, rather nesu'ah would get chenek. And so, therefore, when it says et chamiha in her father-in-law's house, that means when she's nesu'ah, according to Rabbi Ishmael, gets chenek, but Rabbi Eliezer said sikila. So now we don't have any author who would agree with Rabbi Eliezer on this. So who is he following? Shalach Ravin mishemed Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. Kachi hatza'ah shel Mishnah. So Ravin sent from Eretz Yisrael in the name of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. I will explain this baraita in the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Le'olam keRabbanan. In fact, Rabbi Eliezer fundamentally is following Rabbanan. Ve'hachi kamar kol shehu lemata memitat aviha umaynehu nesu'ah bat Yisrael te'ilu nesu'ah bat Yisrael bechenek hacha bemitat aviha bisrefa. And what his opinion is what his language means. Any illegal relation that would be less severe than relations between a father and a daughter. And what would that be? Nesu'ah bat Yisrael. Because here, Nesu'ah bat Yisrael is chenek. And so that chenek is less than serefa. So if you have such a case, then if it was a bat Yisrael be chenek, here, since it's a bat kohen, so we raise it up and it becomes serefa. And so that's why here's a bat Yisrael's chenek, and we raise it up we raise it up to the level of a father and daughter. That's what it means with her father. It means we raise it up. If it's a bat kohen, we raise it up to be the same punishment as a father and daughter. And kol shehi lema'ala memitat aviha. Now, any case of illegal relations that would be more severe than serefa, more severe than the death of incest of father and daughter. Umaynihu arusa bat Yisrael. Well, that would be here arusa bat Yisrael sikila, which is worse than serefa. Dilu arusa bat Yisrael be'alma biskila hacha b'mitat chamiha biskila. Because if it was an arusa bat Yisrael, she would get sikila. So for a bat kohen, she gets the punishment that she would if she sinned with her father-in-law, and that would be sikila. So that's why it stays sikila. So really, the Eliezer is saying agrees totally with Rabbanan. That's sikila and serefa, but they're just saying it in an unusual way. That anyone, if it was a bat Yisrael, if the punishment would be less than serefa, then she gets serefa, and if it would be more than serefa, then it stays the same. It remains sikila. Instead of saying serefa, it just and sikila, it says the punishment that a father and daughter would get, and that's serefa, and the punishment that a father-in-law and daughter-in-law would get, which is sikila. So that's what Rabin said. Matkifla Rabbi Yirmiyah, midi lema'ala lemata ketane. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, the words don't say that. Rabbi Eliezer didn't say above and below. You're adding in too many words to this explanation. Ela amar Rabbi Yirmiyah le'olam ke Rabbi Yishmael. Ve'achi ka'amar et abiha b'rishut abiha b'srefa. Ve'et chamiha mecha miha b'skila. Ve'chol adam b'chayanek. In fact, we're going to follow Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael said serefa for arusa and chenek for nesu'ah. And so we could fit that into the words. When it says et aviha, meaning when she is still in the house of her father, meaning she's only arusa, then that's serefa. That's what Ishmael says. When it says ve'et chamiha, that one doesn't mean when she's in her father-in-law's house, meaning fully married, but rather if she has sins with her father-in-law. That would be besikila. But otherwise, anybody else, meaning if she's married, then chenek. And so that would fit with the Bishmel who says serefa and chenek. The problem with this is, however, you have to take one of the clauses to mean when she's in her father's house, and the other one doesn't mean her father-in-law's house, but rather actually sinning with her father. So that's pretty inconsistent. Amar Rava, Maishana, o idi v'idi mamash, o idi v'idi reshut. And that's Rava's question. You can't change them. Either you interpret both clauses, reshut aviha and chamiha, both as being actual sin with them, or in their house. But you can't take one to be in their house and one to be in actual incest. Ela Amar Rava, le'olam kerebi Shimon. We're going to follow Rabbi Shimon, who says serefa and serefa for all cases. וכסבה רבי אליעזר נשואה כארוסה. מה ארוסה חד דרגה מסכינן לה, מסיקילה לשרפה, אף נשואה חד דרגה מסכינן לה, מחנק לסקילה. We're going to compare a nesu'ah to an arusa. Just like for an arusa, we go one step up. When we go from a Bat Israel to a Bat Kohen, we go one step up from Sikila to Serefa. In other words, everybody agrees that Bat Israel Arusa is Sikila, and then Rabbi Shimon says, oh, if she's a Bat Kohen, we go one step up. And Rabbi Shimon thinks that Serefa is one step worse than Sekila. So that's how we get Serefa. And when you come to Nisu'ah, we take Chenek. And what's one step up from Chenek? Well, that would be Sekila. And that's how you get Serefa and Sekila, which is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. And so he's going back to say in the house of and in the house of. So in the house of her father, that would be Serefa. In the house of her father-in-law, when she's married, that would be Sekila. Okay, the problem is that it doesn't fully follow Rabbi Shimon. I mean, it's following the logic of Rabbi Shimon. In one case, one step up, Sikila, one step up, Serefa, and Chenek, then one step up, Sikila. So we understand like the logic part, but it's not actually following Rabbi Shimon. So Matkifla Rabbi Ichanina, Ha idi v'idi Rabbi Shimon b'srefa kamar. Wait, you said that we're going to follow Rabbi Shimon, but you're not following Rabbi Shimon. You're only following his logic, and you're only following in one case, and then you're applying the logic in the second case, but then you're not actually following Rabbi Shimon because he says Serefa in all cases. Ela amar Ravina leolam kerabanan ve'epuch et abia biskila ve'et chamia bisrefa. Ravina says, in fact, Rabbi Eliezer is following Rabbanan fully, and you have to switch it around. We just have the wrong order, and it really means et aviha when she's in her father's house, meaning when she's arusa, then she gets sikila. When she's in her father-in-law's house, then she gets serefa, which is exactly what Rabbanan says, sikila and then serefa. Now, if you're wondering why he used such confusing language and said et aviha rather than just say arusa, because it wanted to use the language that the Torah uses, right? Et aviha hi mechaledet. Et aviha means that because she's in her father's house, and so that's why it used the common language. So even though it is a bit confusing, Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Bar Avu Amar Rav Halacha kedeshalach Rabin mishemed Rabbi Yosef beRabbi Chanina. So Rav Nachman says the name of Rabba Bar Abu and the name of Rav. Halacha is the first interpretation that Ravin said in the name of Rabbi Yosef beRabbi Chanina. Amar Rav Yosef, Hilcheta Limshicha. Rav Yosef asks, why are you giving a Pesach halacha for this case? What kind of capital punishment is someone going to get in this case and that case? What are you giving halacha for the times of Mashiach? We don't have a Sanhedrin now. We can't give capital punishment. There's no official courts. You don't need a Sanhedrin. You need a court of 23, but you need official semicha, which we don't have anymore. So we can't give capital punishment now until the time of Mashiach. You tell me halacha at times of Mashiach, we'll figure out the halacha when we get to it. Abai rejects this. He says, no, you're telling me, what about all the laws of shechita, of sacrificial animals? Should we not learn them? Just don't learn them anymore because they only apply to Mashiach? No, we don't say that. We learn all the laws. We try to figure out what's the right way opinion, what's the wrong opinion, which one do we follow. Ela derosh v'kabel sachar. Why do we do that? We study it so we can get the reward. We can still appreciate all the important lessons from it. So here also, he's telling you the halacha. What kind of capital punishment would this person get, that person get? Here's the halacha. So we get merit for its study, and we learn a lot of important things from all of these halachot and their discussions. Hachi kamri, this is what Rav meant to say. This is what Rav Yosef meant to ask. Hilcheta lamali sugya dishma'ata halacha kamar. Rav Yosef's question was, why are you saying halacha is like Ravin? Did this sugya, did this flow an argument? Was it about a halacha? It wasn't. It was about explaining the wording of Rabbi Eliezer. We know exactly what Rabbi Eliezer says. We know what his opinion is. We just wanted to figure out, what does his wording mean? Does he agree with this opinion? Does he agree with that opinion? And so since it was only a language discussion to figure out what the words mean, you don't say a halacha when it just comes to an interpretation of what these words mean. You only say halacha when there's a difference in what the practical outcome is going to be. And here, the main point of the discussion and of Rabbi's statement was, here's what he means. He means more than aviha, less than aviha. And so you don't say halacha when it comes to an interpretation, only something that has a practical consequence. Mai Rabbi Ishmael. Now we're going to go back and try to find the source for Rabbi Ishmael's opinion. He said that for arusa gets serefa, and married woman who commits adultery gets chenek. So serefa, chenek, which was not like anybody. Serefa would be like this, and chenek would be like this, but doesn't follow anybody exactly. So what's his source? De Tanya, ubat ish kohen ki techel liznot, bene'ara v'hi arusa katuv medaber. When the pasuk says that a daughter of a kohen commits adultery, it's talking about a ne'ara, and she's an arusa, and she gets burning. So that would be burning over here in this category. I would make a column for the Ishmael, but that would be serefa. And then the nesua is the regular same punishment that is chenek as it is for a bat Yisrael. So that's the thesis. Now we ask the opposite. How do you know that this pasuk is talking only about a na'ara who's arusa? Maybe it's talking about a na'ara even if she's a nesua. We have a pasuk that's talking about regular adultery. If someone commits adultery with his friend's wife, they will die, both the adulterer and the adulteress. That's the regular case of someone who's married, nisu'ah, and that punishment is chenek. That's what we learned. We learned that mot yumat chenek. Hosia katu bat Yisrael biskila ubat kohen bisrefa. Now there are two other pesukim that say there are exceptions to this rule. One of the Pesukim is about a Bat Yisrael and says if it's a Bat Yisrael who's a Ne'ara Me'orasa, she gets Sekila. And there's another Pasuk that excludes a Bat Kohen from the general rule, and that's our Pasuk, Bat Ish Kohen Ki Techel Liznot, she gets Serefa. So we're going to compare the two exceptions. Ma Keshehosi HaKatubet Bat Yisrael Liskila, Arusa Velo Nesua, Af Keshehosi HaKatubet Bat Kohen Lisrefa, Arusa Velo Nesua. Just like the Pasuk that says regarding a Bat Yisrael that she gets Sekila. And it explicitly says in that Pasuk that applies only to an Arusa and not to a Nisu'ah. So when it's excluding from the general rule, it's only excluding a Ne'ara Me'orasa. Anybody else, if she's not an Ne'ara or she's not an Arusa, she stays in the regular rule of Chenek. Only Arusa would get Sekila. So too, this pasuk, Ubat Ish Kohen, even though it doesn't say explicitly if it's Arusa or Nesu'ah, so we're going to compare this exceptional pasuk with the other exception pasuk and learn when it says the Bat Kohen is for Serefa, that's only for Arusa and that's for Nesu'ah. That's how we know that this pasuk of burning applies only to an Arusa. Okay, now the Braita continues, the Braita that we just started here. This is a new Braita, Titania. And it says, Zomemeha u'bo'ala bichlal v'asitem lo kasher zaman v'gomer. So, edim zomemim that testify about a bat kohen, if they are found to be, if those edim are found to be edim zomemim, they don't get serefa, they get the regular punishment that the man would have gotten, would get, and bo'ala, and also the adulterer who sins with a bat kohen, he doesn't get serefa, but rather he gets the regular punishment as if it was a bat Yisrael. And we learned that they are both included in the pasuk, you do to them as they tried to do. Now we're going to try to understand this. Bo'ala, my ka'asher zamam ika. We understand zomemeha, the edim who become zomemin, so they get ka'asher zamam, and we're going to learn why they get his punishment and not her punishment. But Bo'ala, the adulterer, why is he included in the pasuk asitem lo kasher zaman? He's not a witness. He's an adulterer. Ela zomemeha bichla mitat Bo'ala. Rather, we got the words wrong. We have to read it that edim zomemin get the same punishment as the man adulterer and not her with serefa. And how do you know that? Mishum shene'emar. ועשיתם לו כאשר זמם לעשות לאחיו ולא לאחותו דברי רבי ישמעאל. Because the pasuk says that you do to the witness what he tried to do to his brother. What he tried to his brother and not what he tried to do to his sister. In other words, when he testifies about this man and the woman that they committed adultery, and she was a bat kohen, so they get different punishments. She gets serefa, and he would get, depending on what it is, chenek or sekila. And so the ed gets his punishment, not her punishment. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Achat Arusa v'Achat Nesu'ah, Yasat Lisrefa. Now Rabbi Akiva, he has a different opinion. He said Arusa and Nesu'ah both go get Serefa. It sounds a lot like what we had here, Rabbi Shimon, who was in fact the student of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, Yachol Afilu Penuya. Now Rabbi Akiva asks, maybe also a single Bat Nesu'ah who engages in relations promiscuously outside of marriage, even though there's no particular sin of adultery, maybe also she would get serefa. We already brought up this possibility because it is a definition of zona. Ne'emar kan aviyah ne'emar lehalan aviha ma lehalan zenut im zikat habal afkan zenut im zikat habal. He's making gezerah shava. It says in this pasuk, the word aviha, he mechalelet, and it says regarding a bat Yisrael, also aviha. And in that pasuk of bat Yisrael, it's clearly talking about someone who is married, right? She has a bond to her husband, and so too here we will learn aviha to aviha, and it's talking about someone married, not someone who is single. A bat kohen who is single, she does not get burnt if she has relations while she's single. Amar lo Rabbi Yishmael, ima lehala na'ara v'hi arusa, afkan na'ara v'hi arusa. Rabbi Yishmael says, hold on, if you're going to make that gezerah shava, that pasuk, when it talks about aviha, is talking about na'ara me'orasa. That's the pasuk in Devarim about na'ara me'orasa. And so to here you should say na'ara me'orasa. And in that case, only a bat kohen who is arusa would get serefa, but not a nesuah, which is exactly what Rabbi Yishmael thinks. But Rabbi Akiva says it doesn't matter arusa or nesuah. Rabbi Yishmael says you should only apply it to arusa since you're making that gezerah shava. Amar Rabbi Akiva Yishmael achi bat ubat ani doresh. Rabbi Yishmael says, I don't understand what I'm doing. I have another derasha from the word the vav. I have the word bat and I have ubat from the word ubat. I am going to learn also nesu'ah. Okay, we're going to see that there's some misunderstanding between each other. We're going to clarify in a second. But in the end, we'll say that Rabbi Akiva actually has both a gezerah shava and the extra letter Vav from the Gezerah Shavah. That's what he's learning here, that it has to be married and not Penuya. Although, you're right, the Gezerah Shavah only carries over to Arusa. And so how do you know Nisu'ah? Oh, that he learns from the letter Vav. Amar lo, v'chi mipnei she'ata doresh bat ubat nosi zo lisrefa. Bishma has the best line here. He says, just because you decided that you're going to derive a law from the extra vav, you're going to burn this woman? Like, how can you go and give capital punishment of serefa, which is very stringent, to this poor woman because I decided, the extra vav, right? How can you do that? Mashma lehavi et nesuah, lehavi et penuya, v'mashma lo hosi et penuya, hosi et nesuah. If it means that you should include someone, so I know Vav is coming to include, right? So, and you said it's to include the Nisu'ah. Well, why not then also include the Penuya? Because, who told you what to include? While you're including the Nisu'ah, instead include the Penuya. And if it means that you're going to exclude the Penuya, because that's what you learned above from the Gezerah Shavah, not the Penuya, then why don't you exclude the Nisu'ah? So how do you decide which of these derashot you're going to use to include or exclude? And you have a Vav, so include the Nisu'ah. No, maybe include the Penuya and exclude the other one. So your derashot are arbitrary, and based on this arbitrary decision, I think this Vav comes to include Nisu'ah, so now you're going to burn her. Right? How could you do that? It's too arbitrary. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva actually says, no, I'm doing both. I have a Gezerah Shavah and an extra Vav, and so I'm using each one appropriately. The Gezerah Shavah will say, not a Penuya, because that's over there in that law. It's not talking about a Penuya, but an Amorasa who is married. And the bat and the extra vav is going to come to include Nisu'ah, because I already excluded Penuya, so it's not going to include a Penuya. So Rabbi Akiva is actually very clear. So what was Rabbi Ishmael thinking in his question? Rabbi Ishmael savar midikamar le bat ubat shema min hadar b'megezerah shavah. Rabbi Ishmael thought that when Rabbi Akiva said, I'm learning from an extra vav, Rabbi Ishmael thought that he was retracting his Gezerah Shavah. That's why Rabbi Ishmael was so confused. And so when Rabbi Akiva says, I learned bat ubat, I'm including from bat, he thought that meant, forget the Gezerah Shavah. That's what Rabbi Ishmael says, hold on, now you have a vav, and all of a sudden you forget about the Gezerah Shavah. So now how do you know Penuya is not included? And you're just taking a vav and you're including arbitrarily Nisu'ah, but you could include the Penuya because you have no reason to exclude the Penuya. See, that's why Rabbi Ishmael was confused, because he thought he just has a Vav and he's applying it to this instead of that. So Rabbi Ishmael, why applying it to Nisu'ah, not to Penuya? But now Rabbi Akiva clarifies, no, I actually have the Gezerah to exclude Penuya and the Vav to include Nisu'ah. So everybody makes sense. But Rabbi Ishmael, Hai bat ubat mai darish bat. Now Rabbi Ishmael, what is he going to do with the extra Vav? Interestingly, he doesn't say, which he does say other places, but here he actually is going to have an answer. He needs it for what we learned in the Braita from the father of Shemuel bar Avin. Lefi shemasinu shechalak hakatub zecharim ben timimim leba'ale mumin yachol nachlot bibnotehen tamodomar bat ubat. Because we see that the pasuk does make a difference regarding male kohanim, depending on if there's a blemish or not a blemish. If a kohen has a blemish, he cannot serve in the Bet HaMikdash. If he doesn't have a blemish, he can serve in the Bet HaMikdash. So since we already know that distinction, we might have thought that we should make a distinction in their daughters also. Maybe the daughter of an unblemished kohen who commits adultery gets serefa, but the daughter of a blemished kohen, since he's not a great kohen, and so he's already defiled, then his daughter will not get serefa, because it's only because the daughter is defiling her father, but the father is already defiled. So I might have thought that we may make a distinction. That's why it says bat ubat. The letter vav comes to include the daughter of a blemished priest also gets serefa. Rabbi Akiva, where are you going to learn that law from? Because you already used the vav. Mi vehem akribim vehayu kodesh nafka. He learns it from the pasuk in Vayikra. It says the kohanim, they will offer and they will be holy. So the fact that it says they will be holy, so that means kohanim are considered holy even if they're blemished blemished, and it's true, they cannot make offerings in the Bet HaMikdash. They are holy for a different reason. They're holy in that their daughters, if they commit adultery, will get serefah. So that's how we learn that it doesn't matter whether they are blemished or not blemished. They still have holiness in that their daughters will get this more severe punishment of serefah. But Bishmael, what are you going to do with this pasuk? How come we don't learn it from this pasuk? No, this pasuk is only talking about the Kohanim themselves. I would say Kohanim themselves, they are holy whether they're blemished or not. But I wouldn't know anything about the daughters, so I have a better source from Bat Ubat, which is actually talking about the daughters. Bishmael, hi Abiyah. Now, what is Bishmael going to do with the pasuk that she profanes her father? Rabbi Akiva made a gezerah shava, abiha and abiha. But what is Bishmael going to do with this phrase? Rabbi Ishmael can use the baraita that says, according to Rabbi Meir, what does this mean? Et avia, she profanes her father. By committing adultery as a bat kohen, she profanes her father. How so? That beforehand they would treat the father with holiness, and now they say, look what your daughter did, and they treat him in a profane manner. Before they gave him honor, now they say they treat him with degradation, and now they say, cursed is the one who bore this daughter. Cursed is the one who raised this daughter. Cursed is the one from whose loins this daughter emerged. So that's what means her father becomes chol because people are going to speak negatively about her father. So we don't use this for a particular halacha as Rabbi Akiva did of a gezerah shava, but rather we learn about how the father will be treated. Amar Rav Ashi keman karenan reshi'a bar reshi'a afilu reshi'a bar sadika keman kahane tanar. Rav Ashi says, according to whom do we call evil, son of an evil person, even if the person's father was righteous? In other words, you have someone, father was righteous and they are evil, nevertheless, we call them evil, son of evil. Who would say that? It would be this Tana, Rabbi Meir, who says, even though the father actually was unblemished, was holy, was a good Kohen, but because his daughter went this way, so nevertheless we say, cursed is the father of such a person, even though the father wasn't in fact righteous. So this is the way we talk, that must be something wrong with the way the father brought this daughter up, that she would do such a thing, and actions of children certainly reflect on the reputation of the parents. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.